Yes, yes, ho dimenticato questo. Allora, vediamo se esisto. Come facciamo a vederlo? Vediamo qua. Esisto! Rock and roll! Ciao compañeros! Allora, a parte che ho dimenticato, scusate, spero che non si noti, ho dimenticato un dettaglino. Allora, ciao Boldip, hi, how are you? Can you hear me loud and clear? Un po' canto. Questo è su una mugre. Mamma mia, scusate, non mi metterò. Allora, se Dio vuole, anzi, se Allah vuole, ci connettiamo con la Ingrid fra un attimo. Infatti, se forse le mando il link. Sì, Paola, ce la puoi fare. Ti vogliamo bene così come sei. Allora, invita. Copia. Benissimo. Yes, I can hear you. Fantastic. That's great. Loud and clear. Yeah. Con la Ingrid, se non succede niente anche oggi, perché ogni giorno in questa casa succede qualcosa, deve essere all'azzo, parleremo della situazione in Svezia, credo che l'abbiate dedotto. Principalmente gli argomenti saranno due. Uno sono le gang di criminali, probabilmente popolate da buddisti. Chiara reporting for duty, Call of Duty. Grazie Chiara, thank you very much, Claire. I hear you loud and clear, thank you. Il primo topic, quindi il primo argomento che andremo ad affrontare sarà quello di queste gang criminali popolate da buddisti, perché come tutti sanno i buddisti prima o poi si manifestano queste forme di pacifismo e femminismo. E infatti il secondo argomento purtroppo è proprio la situazione delle donne svedesi, almeno direi le sopravvissute. Io ho messo una scaletta fantastica dove, sì, allora questo è l'Iran e dietro c'è, dov'è la Svezia? Porca miseria. Questo è il Suprenalotto che non ganamos nada, ni siquiera un numero. Ah, la Svezia, eccola qua. Fantastico. Perfetto. Parapapà. Dunque, proprio ieri ci sono stati 2 articoli che sono usciti in italiano, che forse ho messo in descrizione, però chissà cosa ho fatto perché non sto capendo più niente. E i dati sono alquanto sconcertanti. Per quanto riguarda gli stupri, solo nell'anno 2010 sono stati 6.000 gli stupri riportati. E questi dati, come sempre, è l'argomento più delicato in assoluto del mondo, perché non viene dichiarata la religione dello stupratore, ovviamente. Bisognerebbe poter andare dentro le carceri e vedere di tutti gli stupratori quanti sono buddisti, cristiani o musulmani. Ed è una cosa che non ha mai fatto nessuno. Ci si è avvicinata molto a Jan Hirsi Ali, che è la regina indiscussa. A mio avviso, the situation is so peaceful that the government is going to send the army. Yes, that is the first question. To tackle the gangs. Yeah, the Buddhists, they are like this. I wonder if they will go with weapons or with pride flags. Yes, yes. Putin is very, very scared when he sees the English army, the English police, dancing with the rainbows and the unicorns. Allora, adesso, io ieri addirittura ho cercato se ci fosse come si dice? Il fuso orario a Plaza Catalunya. Yes. Adesso ci dobbiamo capire. Allora. Chissà come si pronuncia il cognome di questa donna. Questa donna fa la giornalista da sempre, da quando è nata. Magari scrivo this is the link doppeltitas eccetera. A un certo punto questa donna, che io stimo tantissimo, a prescindere dal gossip, adesso dovrebbe arrivare, siamo in bolla, vediamo come se arriva un gin sicuro e si spaccherà qualcosa anche oggi. Dove devo andare? Qua. Allora, qui è a posto, qui è a posto, qui è a posto. Manca solo lei. Cosa stavo dicendo? Non mi ricordo niente. Questo potrei anche spegnerlo, che magari mi prende solo... Ciao, sì, è bellissima, ma chi è? Ah sì, proprio stamattina, guarda, mi sono svegliata di Tokyo, diranno una è svedese, l'altra di dov'è? Sono di Wuhan. Allevo pipistrelli. Questa di YouTube è solo una cosa in più. Ingrid, te quiero. Ingrid, por favor. Ingrid. Sì, diceva, scusa, ha rimbalzato. Ingrid ha sempre fatto la giornalista e poi, eccola. Ingrid, hi.
Hi, Paula. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. You?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm sorry about yesterday.
No problem. Every day there is a problem here on YouTube, so don't bother that. So thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We would like to deal with the two main topics, the criminal gangs and also the situation of Swedish women as far as rapes are concerned, because we have a strange data here in Italy, and it is impossible for us to understand if these data are true, authentic, or maybe not. For example, I must have read that in 1 year, I think it was 2010, Sweden has had 6,000 rapes.
Yeah, I think now it's like 8,000 or 9,000 rapes every year. And the very interesting thing is that when Sweden started to do statistics over crimes, that was in 1975, the same year that our parliament decided that Sweden wasn't going to be a Swedish country anymore, but a multicultural one. That's when it all started. They actually decided that. And they said that the foreigners who were coming to Sweden, they would not have to adapt to the Swedish way of doing things, but they should be told that it was a good thing if they could keep their culture and their traditions and everything.
No.
You see, and in that year, 1975, there were 300 reported rapes, and now it's 8,000 or 9,000.
It is incredible. 75, 200, and today
300. But now 8,000 or 9,000.
Oh, this is incredible. What is Sweden thinking about? Because we don't understand. We have this data. And then also, 2 days ago in Italy, they published 2 articles on Sweden saying that the Swedish government is thinking of sending the army to help the police against these criminal gangs. Also, in that case, data are very strange. Sweden has had 11 deaths in the last month.
Yeah, no more than that. I think it's now 18 something. It's people being killed by shootings. And there was this horrible thing with the explosion, the bomb that exploded and killed a 25-year-old woman. And she was not the target. They are so stupid. They can't even, they can't shoot the right people. They can't put the bombs in the right house. Of course, there is no right house, but you see what I mean. She was living neighbor with someone who is a gang criminal, but he doesn't live there anymore. But they apparently didn't know that, and they couldn't put the bomb on the right house. So this young woman, she had a horrible death. She was she was her body was parted in two.
My God. Okay, so, and then also, just to finish the data that I could collect, for example, in the year 2017, Sweden has had, they were saying 2 days ago in Italy, 300 dead people, 700 wounded people, and 400 explosions or shootings.
Yeah.
So where are the Vikings first? No more Vikings.
Yeah.
So tell us,
I
we don't
ask
understand.
myself that every day. But it's like, the story about the frog, that if you put it in cold water and it turn up the heat, it will not know that it's being boiled. I think that's exactly what has happened in Sweden. At first, people didn't even know about the decision from 1975. And I will tell you, we had some immigration before that. And as long as they were Europeans, a lot of people came from Italy, for example, to work in Sweden in the 60s and early 70s, and that was fine. But there already started to come some people from Africa or the Middle East, and they realized, they even did studies about this, that these people they are not doing very well in Sweden. They don't learn to speak the language, they don't fit in the Swedish mentality, and they never get a job. So even though they knew this, they decided that multicultural was the future, and that was going to be very, very good. So most Swedes never knew about this. The newspapers didn't write about them making this decision. It took me like 15 years before I even realized that they had taken this decision. Unanimous in Parliament. Unanimous. And and at first the people, I mean, it's mostly Middle East and North African people that can't cope here, that are being in those gangs and everything. And at first they didn't live where the Swedes live. They lived in the suburbs, and not many Swedes had anything to do with them. You could sometimes read about something happening and say, "Oh my God, what are these people?" But nobody knew how many they were, and that they were. I mean, since the millennial, Sweden is a country with 10 million people. Since the millennial, when we had 8 million, we have taken in 2 million people, mostly Muslims. So you see, at one point, you couldn't hide it anymore. And it happened so quickly. Just suddenly, they were all over the place. Before, you never saw any people with hijab. Now they're all in all the cities. I have moved out to a little village in the countryside with only 2,000 people to be safe, because you can't live in the city anymore. But many people don't have that option. Me, I can work from home, so I can live anywhere in the world, actually. But most people can't. And so now it's really, and now it seems like it's all over. Is there any chance to save Sweden? I think that's why the Vikings haven't shown themselves yet, because what are we supposed to do? I mean, we have had for so many years politicians that both to the right and to the left, they were all together. They were all in it together. They thought that migration was a fantastic idea. And if you, like I started for 12 years ago, something like that, to criticize this immigration policy and what happened to Sweden, that used to be the safest country in Europe, maybe the safest country in the world. Now we are the most violent country in the EU. It's just unimaginable. How did this happen? And so it's really not. But now we have, since 1 year, we have a better government, because the Social Democrats that almost always run Sweden, they realized in the 70s, that's why they took this decision in 1975, that the Swedes were not voting for them so much anymore, because all the Swedes had become middle class, and they are the party for the workers, So when they realized that, because they wanted to be a party with 45 to 50% of the vote, then they decided to bring people in here that were going to stay poor, have low income jobs, or maybe no jobs at all, to live on welfare. And so That's why they have been continuing with this. The only strange thing is that why we have had some right-wing governments, why did they keep doing this? They were just importing voters for the Social Democrats. I think because if I said something, I was a racist, I was a Nazi, I was an Islamophobe, I was shut out. All my journalist colleagues, they didn't want anything to do with me. Ingrid, she's gone crazy because you were not supposed to say these things. But I'm a journalist. I always want to find the truth. And when I find it, I'm going to tell people about it. But that are some of the explanations that this happened and why no one is doing anything.
Yes, actually, I was about to ask you this because sometimes a journalist, when they choose not to speak about Islam, because otherwise you will be labeled and maybe you lose your job. That's the truth, even here in the south of Europe. But so you were saying that they made a deal, the Social Democrats, which is left wing.
Yeah, left wing. Yeah,
they made a deal to have more poor people to have votes, but then
I have no evidence of this. It's just that you know that in the 80s, late 80s or early 90s, they made a deal. The Social Democrats made a deal with some of the biggest Muslim organizations in Sweden, where they said, if you tell your people to vote for us, we will give you places in parliament and in the local parliament. And that was a secret. That deal was a secret for many, many years. But like 10 years ago, it all came up to the surface. So I'm pretty sure when I say that, that was the plan. The Social Democrats, they realized that they were not going to be that big party anymore that always was in government. So they decided to bring in people who could vote for them, since the Swedes stopped voting for them. But since 1 year, we have a right-wing government with the support of the nationalist party, Sweden Democrats. And we are seeing things starting to happen. But of course, what can we do about all the violence? I mean, we have the smallest police force in EU. And that's the thing that's, I don't know why that is. Maybe because we used to be such a friendly country with not much crime, so we didn't need so many police officers. And they just took in all these people without thinking that, now we need more police officers. Now we need more prosecutors. Now we need more doctors and nurses. They never did that. They just took them in and we will fix it. We are Swedes. We will fix this. But this new government, they have started to change the laws to have harsher punishments when you go to prison. And if you can be sentenced if you are from, I think, 13. It used to be 15, but now we have 13-year-old killers, because they want people who can't be sentenced to prison. It's so crazy. But this new government, they have, if not seen the whole problem, they at least know that we have a problem and we need to start fixing things. But then new laws takes 1 year or 2 years before they go through the parliament. So but it's some positive things anyway.
Yeah. So you think that they will deploy the army to help the police?
No, what I think they mean and what they plan to do is that the police have some jobs like guarding embassies and so on, so that they could give to the military instead. They know how to guard buildings and so on. And then there will be more police officers to fight crime. And because we don't have a very big military in Sweden anyway, so I don't know if they really can help them, because they are so few.
I remember that I think 2 years ago, there was the Quran burning tragedy. And I remember that the Muslims, they were jumping on the cars of the police and the police were doing nothing, and they were just burning cities. I don't remember, maybe Malmo or something else. And I remember I thought, okay, this kind of police is not used, is not even trained to something like that, even because
and why is that? Why did this happen? It's because of the feminization of Sweden. That the most important thing is not to have stable, tough guys working as police officers. No, it's much more important that you have women, even if they are very, very small and very, very tiny. You have to have equality. And then it's very, very important to bring in like Arab guys. Maybe they don't really love Sweden but they can speak Arabic. So maybe they can talk to some of these. That is what has totally almost destroyed the Swedish police. And it has become so corrupt. I know that you are used to corruption and you are used to mafia, and we are totally new. No one is corrupt in Sweden. That's the self-image we have. But now I have found out there are so many. I mean, there are prosecutors in jail because they have leaked information to these criminals, and a lot of lawyers are like the gangsters that they defend, and so many of them have lost their jobs. So there has become very much. And I think that if Sweden, we have like now 40 clans, criminal gangs, family-based clans.
Tell me about that, because I gotta write it down. And can we say that these criminal gangs are Muslims?
I don't think we can say we cannot, but I mean most of them are. Since I know there is one big clan that we have known about for 5 or 10 years from Gothenburg, that is called the Ali Khan clan, and they are Muslims, of course, and I know also there are a lot of Somali clans. And I just read an article, a new book that's come out in Sweden, where they have studied these 40 clans, these gangs, and they say that they now it's not only that they are selling drugs and making girls prostitute themselves. They also have these white parts of the business. I mean, they get money from welfare, and they put it in, they do it in a big scale. So they have people that work in the banks that can help them when they want to put a lot of money in to wash the money from black to white. And they have people in the tax authorities, and they have people in the police. They have people everywhere. So, and while Swedes have just been sleeping and saying, we are not a corrupt country, we don't do that. So we didn't even see what was happening. And how can you do that? How can you see it when my colleagues, the journalists in the mainstream media, never write about this? Never, ever. If you cannot criticize anything that has to do with the immigrants. Even when figures came out that of all the rapists, like 95% have a foreign background.
95?
Yeah. It took them like 10 years. A lot of studies came out, and the journalists just, no, we're not writing about that. No, we're not writing about that. And I remember
what do they want from us? I am a woman too. What do they want? The sacrifice?
Yeah,
I should sacrifice my freedom, my what?
Yeah, I think they are so caught up in this, this lie, this fantasy that multiculturalism is the best thing of all. And if you are not on board with that, you are a horrible person. You're an evil person. You're doing Satan's job or something like that. Actually, it's just the opposite.
Yeah, it's the opposite.
But And since they are the one that decide what we are talking about, the journalists in TV and radio and the big newspapers, they could for so many years totally dominate. So there were many Swedish people, maybe there still are, but at that time it was horrible. They had no idea. I remember I talked to an older gentleman, and we talked about all the rapes. This was like 5-6 years ago. And he said, yeah, it's so shocking to me that the rapes have gone up like this. And I said, yeah, but it's not Swedish guys, it's foreigner. What do you say? Why do you say that? That's horrible. Why do you say that? That can't be true. And that is the reaction that most Swedes had when you told them the truth. And some still. But I think most of the Swedes have now woken up. And what I am afraid of is that they will think it's all over. There's nothing we can do because it's gone so far. So there is no chance to save our country. That's what I'm most afraid of.
Yeah. And also I was reading, but it was many years ago, maybe 3 or 4, that Denmark wanted to send back the Syrians to Syria. And they started to say that Syria was a safe place and something like that. And I was into Syria in that moment, so I remember that I was following those news. I don't know then what happened. They sent them back, or maybe they built some houses to keep the Syrians there and then send them.
I don't really know what happened to the Syrians, but you must understand that Sweden has taken in like 4 times as many as Denmark, Norway, and Finland together. So even if Denmark thought that they had problems with Syrians, they are just a little drop in the ocean compared to how many Syrians we have in Sweden. In Sweden, the second most common language used to be Finnish, because a lot of Finnish people moved here in the 50s and 60s, and Finland used to be part of Sweden way back. And now it's Arabic. And when the civil war started in Syria, the person who was in charge of the migration board, he decided it was his. He could do that. He didn't need the government to decide, but the boss, he decided that everyone that came from Syria would have permanent residency. So you only said, I'm from Syria. There were people who were already in Sweden illegally. And they went and said, I'm from Syria. And nobody checked it because, they had lost all their passports. Of course, when you run away from war, there is no time to find your passport. So I don't know how many Syrians I think they are the second biggest immigration group now. And many of them have already had citizenship. So the only thing we could do to save Sweden is mass repatriation. We have to send, I would say, at least 1 million people back to their own countries. And then some people say, yeah, but what about the ones that are born here? Because, the most criminal group, it's not the immigrants, it's the children of the immigrants. So when everybody said, okay, maybe there's some problem with the first generation, but second generation, they will be they will be just like us, just like the Swedes. And third generation, no one can tell the difference. And now we see that second generation they are the most criminal group of all.
They
so,
also...
how can you hope when you have 40 clans, 40 mafia-like organizations that the money that they deal with every year is like half the Swedish budget. It's so big, it's so grotesque, you can't imagine. Well, maybe you can because you live in the mafia country.
You are becoming Sicilian.
Yeah. And I've said that in my podcast that we should go to Italy and say, please, can you come and help us? Because you know how to deal with these people. We don't.
But I wanted to ask you this. you have 2 million Muslims, let's say, and
Mhm.
how do they work? Do they work? Do they speak Swedish? Do they have Swedish girlfriends or boyfriends? I don't know. There is not a society.
No.
No.
There is no mix, I should say. Of course, there are always some, but normally they pick Muslim wives. They don't want Swedish wives, and hopefully not so many Swedish women want Muslim husbands. There are always some, of course, but no, most of them. I don't know. Maybe half of them work, and half of them are on welfare. We have around 1 million people living on welfare in Sweden,
So they have
most,
some money every month
yeah,
just because they are
yeah,
more or
it's
less
just
in euro.
It's just in Europe maybe if it's one person maybe 2,000 euro. If it's a family, 3,000 euro. You will not starve.
Can I come there and say something ending with Allah, and may you give me 2,000 euro every month?
Yeah,
And then I put the hijab and I go like this. Okay,
yeah,
so somebody went crazy in Sweden some years ago. If this is the situation,
yeah, yeah.
that's why you
And
call Sweden
it's
Absurdistan.
yeah, that's true.
I saw that.
Yeah. No, but like 5, 6, 7 years ago, there's something called the Swedish Institute, and they're about the image of Sweden. It's so. Most governments they don't care about the reality in Sweden. It's the image of Sweden that is so important. So that's why we shouldn't talk about the rapes and the shootings and everything. But now we're at the point that we have to do it. But for so many years they said. So there was one website from the Swedish Institute some years ago that told all the people in Syria and other Arab speaking countries that of all the welfare we have in Sweden, you have for every child you have this much money, and if you have an apartment you can't pay for, we will help you with part of that, and if you don't get a job we will give you money, and okay, we think it's good if you learn Swedish, but if you don't, you don't have to, because we will pay interpreter for the rest of your life, and you have free health care. I say free because it's not free for the Swedes because we pay with our tax money. But people who come here, there are retired people, Swedish retired people that have worked all their life, but they didn't earn very much. So maybe their pension is like 1,000 euro a month. But if you come here when you are like 75 or 65 or 70, and you never worked a day, you never paid any tax in Sweden, they give you more than 1,000 euro. It's just they are spitting in our face, and they had a website. Come to Sweden. This is what you get if you come to Sweden. We are such a welfare country, and you're so welcome. It's just you can't make this shit up.
No, it is grotesque. It's really the absurdity. We are living the era of absurdity.
Yeah.
I don't have words. I don't know. So who to blame, according to you? I understood that you don't like maybe the left, political
No.
left. Not very much.
No, not anymore. I
You
mean,
don't.
my grandmother, my father's mother, she was parliament. She was in parliament for the Social Democrats when I was born, and so up until I was 30 or something like that, I thought the Social Democrats were absolutely the best party. And they were the ones that had taken Sweden from poor country to a very rich country. We were even the richest country in the world in the 70s.
Yes.
And but then I realized that as they had this project, they wanted to help the Swedes. They were not the only ones working for it, but they took all the honor because they were in government. But when that project was finished, as I said to you, then most Swedes were not workers anymore. They were middle class, or even if they were workers, they had money like a middle class family, and they bought their own houses. So they were not actually voting for the Social Democrats as much as they had before. That's why I detest them, because once upon a time, I think they loved the Swedish people, they loved Sweden, and they wanted to do great things with our country. And then when they realized that, maybe we're not going to be in power all the time, for eternity, then we don't give a shit about the Swedish people or Sweden. Just as long as we can stay in the government, we don't care if we bring in 2 million criminals. We don't care. That's actually what I think. And that's why I detest them.
Yeah. And what about feminism? I think that Western feminism has some failed process in it.
Totally. And I think it's so sad, because what happened when, I mean, there was a cause, of course, once upon a time, that that women should have the same opportunities, but then it turned into everything must be 50-50, even though we know that men and women are not the same. We have different skills, we have different interests, and there's this thing called the equality paradox, that when you live in a welfare country like Sweden, then women tend to go with the traditional female professions. So what they thought was that we need to liberate the women and give them every opportunity, and then they will be engineers and police officers, and but that's not what happens. In India, it's more likely that a woman will go for an engineer education, because she really needs to find a good job so she can support a family or whatever. But in Sweden, where you don't have to worry about money, because the state will always, they won't give you won't be rich, but you will not starve. That will never happen. And you will not be without a house. So then you just go for what I want to do, not what I need to do to support myself and my children. So that's the equality paradox.
And in this equality paradox, did feminism castrate men in some way, metaphorical way?
Metaphorically, of course, but that's what happened, because when women started, when they started with this, that we must have more women, so they took in not the most qualified person, but the one who was a woman. And that destroyed the police in Sweden and so many other authorities. And I think that when men realized, they were sort of sleeping, I think, and then they suddenly realized that to have sex with a woman, you have to call yourself a feminist. So they started to call themselves feminists, and then the women came to the conclusion, I don't want a sissy. I don't want a man who does what I tell him to do. So now, the men, they lost twice.
They lost completely. And what about the women? Are they moving? For example, do you remember some months ago there was France burning?
Yeah.
Completely burning. And in that moment, I was following a lot the news and the activists, and many French people, they were moving away from Paris to another village and so on. So now the situation of women, of Swedish women, is so serious that they are moving, they are going out during the night, they drive along the car with knife like I do, something like that.
Well, it's hard to know really, because as I told you before, the media don't write about this. They don't talk to women. But I saw some women the other day after this bombing of the house. Many said, "I don't go out at nights. I'm very scared. What is happening to our country? How did this happen?" So I think that, yeah, that's why I moved out into the countryside, to this little village, and also because my daughter and my grandchildren are here. But first I used to live in Malmo. Everybody knows about Malmo, and I couldn't stay there anymore. So like 10 years ago, I just left that city and I moved to my old town, Helsingborg, and then it became just like Malmo. So and now I live in the countryside. So, and I think that is, or I should say, I know that more and more Swedes are leaving the big cities. I mean, this problem is now coming to the smaller cities too. But if we start with the three biggest cities, Stockholm, Gothenburg, and Malmo, you can see how people vote. If you see that in Sweden, the total of Sweden, like the Social Democrats, they had like 28%, and the Sweden Democrats, the Nationalist Party, they had about 20% in all of Sweden. But if you see in the big cities, the Social Democrats have right 45 or 50%, and the Sweden Democrats only have like 10 or 15. And that is not because like some like to say that, oh, in the big cities they are more educated, they're more modern, they know. No, that's not it. The Swedes have left, and more foreigners are voting there. So that's why the cities, I mean, Malmo is totally lost. It's totally lost. That will be a caliphate within 10 years.
Yes, every time I see Malmo in the news, I already know that it's the religion of peace striking back.
But actually, there was a Quran burning in Malmo yesterday, just like it was 2 weeks ago, I think. And then there were riots in Rosengård. But this time, and it was they had a female police chief in Malmo. And there was a lot of police at Rosengård, but they didn't do anything. They didn't leave their cars. They just sat in the cars, and they had like the sirens on, and they just let these rioters, jump on the cars, and it was horrible. And the next day, this woman police chief, she was interviewed in the big news, and they said to her, "What do you think when you see what happened there?" Well, I was sad. Is that really an appropriate reaction? Are you going to cry a little bit? And she actually said, we have been there and had discussions with them so many times, and we had hopes that they wouldn't do like this. Yeah, but why didn't you go out and take them on? Why didn't you do anything? No, because we didn't want to escalate the situation. And yesterday, I know, because I have good sources in security and information services, I know that they had a crisis meeting with all men, and they decided to be there and be very tough, to say to everybody, you don't speak it. Just go away. If you say something, you're gonna get back. We're gonna hit you. And I was, but what about the female police chief? Well, she's not really chief anymore. Oops.
Okay.
That's not official. Not official. I think they will, they will take her out slowly. But I think that was a real wake-up call, and that's what we need. We don't need. Of course, there are women who could be great police chiefs. That's not what I mean. Yeah. But you can't, generally speaking, you need tough men and not
Yeah.
women who get sad when they riot and destroy our cities. So yeah. So there were no riots yesterday in
At the
Rosengård.
end, did Sweden ban the Quran burning? I don't
No,
remember.
no,
During the summer? No, they don't.
no.
Okay.
Denmark, they have some blasphemy laws they want to, and in Sweden, the government has been speaking about not giving them the permission. I mean, it would still be by the law, but you won't have police protection. So I guess not so many would like to burn the Quran because they will be lynched. And I don't like that, of course. I don't want them to ban it because we live in a free speech society, and you should be able to criticize a religion. And but burning is not criticizing. Yes, it is. And it's a very good way to show people, because I have been saying this for 10 years, that Muslims, they have a totally different mindset than we have. And their mission, not all of them, but many of them, they know that Allah wants them to spread Sharia all over the world. That's their mission. That's how they get to paradise. So, and what happened when I told people, no, Ingrid, no, that's not
You
true.
are
No, when they
crazy.
come here, they will become just like us. No, they won't, because Christianity is totally different from Islam.
What
And
about the? Yes, I'm sorry. You finish. Sorry.
yeah, I just want to say that and people didn't believe me, and I even wrote that book From Sweden to Absurdistan, and still there were just zip, nobody talked about it. And then comes this Dane, Rasmus Paludan, to Sweden last Easter, and he burns Qurans. And he didn't burn Qurans because he couldn't even get there. But in a lot of, there were riots in like 10 or 12 cities. And he made more in those days, and in that Easter weekend, he did more than I and all the other people have been talking about, or the Sweden Democrats have done for 10, 15 years. In one Easter weekend, he woke up so many Swedes when they saw how the Muslims behave. And it wasn't only, young guys, it was families, mothers and children throwing rocks at the police. So I think you should absolutely be permitted to burn the Quran, because that wakes people up.
Yeah. And what about Christianity in Sweden? There are some people sometimes in Italy, they think that where Christianity is strong, Islam doesn't come. I don't know what you think. I don't know what I think about this. So what's your opinion?
Sweden is the most non-belief country in Europe. We have totally lost. I just read this book called The Nation That Forgot God. And I, as a Christian, I've only been a Christian for 4 years because I grew up in this country where we are. If you're Christian, you're a little bit stupid. All smart guys, they know that atheism and I had this in me from I was a child. But my grandmother, my mother's mother, she was a Christian, so she gave me all the stories. So she planted the seed in me. And 4 years ago, I met Jesus when I was on the Sea of Galilee. I can't give you that story now, but it's an interesting story. And I had kind of understood for a few years that we need Christianity back in Sweden. That's one of the reasons that we have been so blinded, and we couldn't even imagine that people could be so lit up, so fired up by their religion, because we don't have a religion anymore. So I was really positive. I even said to people, I want to become a Christian, but I don't know how to do it. How can you couldn't just say, okay, I will believe in you. So I think that God, he put me there in this boat on the Sea of Galilee, and suddenly I got on the wrong boat. I thought that was now I'm telling it anyway, but I think I have to. There was a group of Christians from Minnesota, and that's where all the Swedes who emigrated to the US, they lived in Minnesota, and then the reverend started to talk about when Jesus was walking on water, and it was a storm, and the disciples were also, oh, we're gonna die, where's Jesus, why is he not here? And then he comes there, and then Peter says, oh, wow, you're walking on water, you must really be the Son of God. I know, can I do that too? And Jesus said, yeah, come. And he starts walking, and then he starts to doubt. He goes down, and Jesus brings him up. And then the reverend said, and then Jesus said to Peter, why do you have so little faith? And it was just boom, right in my heart. Ingrid, what's wrong with you? Of course, you need faith. You've always said that you can move mountains with faith. Why didn't you think that you could do it? So I think that God planned this for me so that I could really, this is what it is. And now, as a journalist, I've always looked for truths that nobody else talks about, and then I want to learn everything about it, and then I want to tell everybody about it. And now, since I found out that Christianity is the truth, I now am in this church, and I go in the Bible school, and I'm writing a book now that I hope will bring many Swedes back to God. And my plan is that this book, let's see if I can find out the right words in English. Oh my God, are you for real? That's my plan for what the book should be called.
That's fantastic. I'm so happy that you said that you tell us your story there. So you visited the occupied Palestine that gotta be free from the Jews.
No, there's so many things I learned when I was there, that the people that I lived with, they were Zionists, Christian Zionists. And I said, why are you Zionist? Because that's sort of a word that everybody doesn't like. And I wasn't really aware what to think about it. And they said, well, that's really simple, because, it says in the Bible that Jesus will not come back to earth until the Jews are back in Israel and in Jerusalem. So we want Jesus back. So therefore,
we are working for that. Yes. Yeah. I'm so happy. Well, your project seems to be wonderful. Your book and all the path that you had from atheism to Jesus, Christianity, that's faith and nothing else.
And I found out something. A friend of mine that I met the other day, her son is 18, and she was right. Is it true that you became a Christian? Tell me the story. What happened? And then when she heard, she said, oh, okay, that's very interesting. And I can tell you that my son, the 18-year-old, he has become a Christian. And I said, wow, how did that happen? Well, because of the Muslim, that there are so many Muslims, and they are really, they have an identity. They believe in Muhammad. They are Muslims. And many Swedish especially young men, I think they think, okay, they have Muhammad. What do I have? Jesus. Let's go to a church and find out some things. So he and his friend, and that seems to be a new trend in Sweden, that young people, so that they need a strong identity, because the Muslims, they think they are the best people in the world, so they have all the rights, and the Swedish guys, they have been so put down. So I'm very happy to see that this is a little trend anyway in Sweden.
Yeah. And it's not unusual. There are many people studying Islam and then going back to Christianity because of Islam, even because Islam is what's the word in English again? Antithesis? Antithetical to Christianity. So Jesus is antithetical to Muhammad.
Yeah.
And so that is a process that I saw many times in many people.
But the strange
So-
thing is that, I mean, the Pope, he is all for, this new world religion, Chrislam, I think they plan to call it. And the Church of Sweden, they don't ever talk about Jesus. It's all about, LGBTQ and migration and climate change. And they say that we are brothers. The Muslims, they are our brothers and sisters. And I actually, before I became a Christian, this might be 10 years ago or something, there was this new archbishop, a woman. She is gone now, but the new one isn't better. But she had as her motto, she had in Swedish, but Allahu Akbar, God is greater. And why? That's not a very Christian thing to go around and say. I'm sure there is some passage in the Bible where it says God is greater than blah, blah, blah. But she was apparently flirting with the Muslim societies. And then she had said on a discussion, she got the question first she goes, who has the right way to God? Is it Jesus or Muhammad? You know what the top head of the Church of Sweden said? Well, there are many ways to God. And I, as an atheist, I was so angry. Jesus says, I am the way and the life and the truth. You have no right to say that there are. He says that there is only one way to the Father, and that is through me. So that is one thing. And then, as a Christian, I can say that I am very sad because all these Muslims that won't come to heaven because the Church of Sweden won't even talk to them about Jesus. So they don't know.
Yeah.
That's sad.
That's sad, like the police officer.
Yeah.
We should cry.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask you this. You don't have a lot of jihad, for example. So you have a lot of criminal gangs and rapes, but jihad, for example, like in France, you don't have episodes or tragedy, like, I don't know, 9/11.
You mean big terror attacks?
Yeah.
No, we only had one bigger terror attack. That was in Stockholm 10 years ago, something like that, when someone took a truck and killed, was it 7 people?
The car ramming, like.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
But I would say that, jihad comes in many different shapes and forms. And what we have, I just said that in my podcast the other day, we are in civil war in Sweden. An asymmetric, low intense, but civil war. And if you look at the criteria for civil war, most of them Sweden check in on, that you have gangs, you have the places, areas where the state no longer have control. Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true in Sweden. And so that's what I think that I don't know if it's a plan or if it's just coincidence that they do all the big terror attacks in France, but in Sweden it's the ongoing, the rapings, the shootings, the robberies, where what's the word in English? Where they take off the clothes from the people they robbed, and they force them to lick their feet and do humiliation robberies, we call them.
They do that?
Yeah. Oh my God, that was such a trend some years ago, and it's still going on. It's just that now people are so used to it, so they don't film it so much anymore that they did. It's just horrible, and that is a form of terror. I mean, the gang criminality, it is terror, because it's not just that they fight about selling drugs and they kill each other. Now they have killed so many totally innocent people. They have no respect for human life at all. I mean, they just go into this bar. A few weeks ago they went into a bar And there was this 20-year-old guy that they wanted dead. They killed him. And then they killed a man who was 70 and blind. And then they hurt two other people. They have no respect for human life. And that is terror. Because you don't know, can I go to the bar? Can I go to the pub? Is that okay? Or will someone, start shooting?
That's crazy. See, so you have another kind of jihad, let's say, not like France or Belgium. What was the airport? It was in Belgium, Bruxelles. Yes. Yes. So
but
you have
one who was in on both of that was a guy from Malmo, not a Swede, of course, but a Muslim. So
yeah.
No, it's and I think wouldn't it be a good thing if the European peoples could come together and form sort of an organization, or I don't know, just to say, we are the peoples of this country. We are the Europeans, and you have no right to destroy our continent, our homes, our countries. You have no right to do that. It's like they are so confident that we will just stay quiet so they can just go on taking everything from us, our future, our children's future, our grandchildren's future.
It would be really nice. The point is that Europeans don't exist. I am Italian. I don't know. Italians are different from the English, for example. I cannot put up with the French people, for example. And I get along with the Spanish people a lot. I don't like the Greeks. I don't know. The Greeks, they are strange towards Italian because we did bad stuff in Greece when there was a fascism. I don't know. Yes, but it would be nice. The point is that we are very different from one country to the other.
That difference is actually a strength. I mean, what I mean is not that we are one European people. No, we're not. We are very different, and that's fantastic. That's so great. I mean, Swedes are even different from Danes. They're very similar, but and that is so great. We need the Italians, the Englishmen, the French, the Greek, all of them, and we could unite in that. The Greeks have a right to Greece, full stop. And the Italians have a right to Italy, full stop, and so on. And then we could maybe support each other in some way. I don't know,
should.
Just a thought.
We should. I would like to ask you the last question, and then we can wrap up because it's 1 hour. And usually people in Italy think that Islam is very similar to fascism. We have this past history, but actually I think that Islam is more similar to communism, and maybe I don't know, what's your opinion on this? Do you think that Islam is more like communism or more like fascism?
Well, I don't know if that's really important. I always say that I hate all totalitarian ideologies: fascism, Nazism, communism, and Islam. So I think we have so much to. Is it more like communism or like Nazism? No, that's not. The thing is, they are all totalitarian ideologies. They want to decide everything in a person's life. It's not only, I mean, Islam is not, it's not a religion. It's 97% ideology, and then there's like 3% religion. So, and they have rules for everything in your life, even which foot you must put first when you go into the bathroom. There are rules for everything. So you don't have, and they have a God that hates them. He's always angry, and he always wants to punish them, and they can never be sure if they go to heaven. It cannot be more different from Christianity. And that one more thing about the Archbishop that we had before. I wrote to her and tried to get an answer, because she had said that we believe in the same God, that Allah and God is the same entity. And I wrote to her, this was before I became a Christian, but I was really upset. And I wrote to her and said, okay, can you explain this to me? First, God sends his only son to save all people in the world, Jesus Christ. 600 years later, he changes his mind. And he says to Muhammad, go out and kill all the Christians, the one that believe in my son, kill them. Of course, I never got an answer, but that's the question that all journalists should be putting every day, so that people could see how absurd this is.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Well, do you think that Islam is just a human movement, or do you think that there is what's the name again? There is
Satanic?
a force,
Demonic?
something like that. Yeah.
Since we have already decided now and concluded that God and Allah is not the same entity, but Allah is some entity, and I would say that he is the devil.
Right on. Thank you so much, Ingrid, for fighting against the devil with us.
Thank you, Paula. It was a pleasure. Let's do it again.
It was my pleasure, and thank you from everybody else here. And we will see maybe each other soon for your new book or something like that. You text me, and we will see each other again. It was my pleasure.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Ingrid. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao, ciao. Bye. Grazie a tutti. Ciao, ciao.